Good afternoon to everybody. Again, it's wonderful to be here and have this opportunity to talk to everyone about what is going on in this world and why things are happening the way they are. Well, brethren, have you ever wondered in your minds, and I'm sure you have, and to those that may listen on this tape later, where there just seems to be one too many coincidences occurring around the earth, around this world, too many times, one after another. But then it'll seem like there'll be some peaceful days, peaceful months, maybe several years of peace, and all of a sudden there's upheavals, there's wars, there's disease and problems. And you may be tempted in your mind to think, well, hey, wait a minute, who's pulling the strings here? Who's moving the levers, and what's going on around this world? More governments, countries, and people rioting and sedition and all kinds of things, takeovers of militaries, coups d'etats, and things like that. Well, once we had a president, brethren, of this nation who thought to himself, and he had the wisdom, and I'm sure our Father in heaven gave him this thought and wisdom, that something or someone is behind what is going on this earth. Too many coincidences, too many things happening. And that president, I'm going to quote to you a statement from him, which I was absolutely amazed to read and find out about. And his name was Woodrow Wilson. And he wrote this down, and I'm going to read it word for word in 1913, just before World War I kicked in, so to speak. Here it is. I will quote it. Since I entered politics, I have chiefly had men's views confided to me privately. Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce, manufacturing, are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, and so interlocked, that's so complete and so pervasive, that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. End quote. Think about that. President Woodrow Wilson, over a century ago, 1913. He was a thinking man. He was thinking about what is going on. He was not just a blind leader. He knew something was going on around the world. Something's afoot. Well, this statement he made, brethren, back in those early years of 1900s, certainly makes it clear that it's a reflection of what the Bible says about what is going on and who's the prime power of the air, the prince of the power of the air, I should say. We all know by now, reading the Holy Scriptures and seeing what's going on today, the influences of Satan the devil. He has a way of manipulating people, individually and groups of people. He has a way of doing that. Let's consider, brethren, just for a few moments here, this present-day commerce that we live in, the educational system, the culture of today, and religion. I'll never leave that out because he's influencing that in a lot of different ways. And unfortunately, brethren, there are countless millions of people across this land who listen to the whispers of this here being that we call Satan the devil. As all of us know, he was a great archangel before the very throne of our Creator in heaven. His name was Lucifer at that time, but he rebelled against our Father in heaven. I think he took a third of the angels with him and talked them into rebelling against our Creator. He wanted to take over his throne, but he didn't win out on that one. He was tossed out, and there must have been a great battle in the heavens when that happened. His evil, destructive behavior, brethren, certainly came out in that rebellion. And today he is behind all the turmoil and the problems we see moving across this earth. We know him and we talk about him as the adversary, rightly so. Now, there's two weapons he has, two of them. One is deception, which I think we're all pretty familiar with or know about, But there's another one. It's called skepticism. He puts doubts in people's minds that, well, he's a myth. He doesn't really exist. Now, the proof of that came out when my brother Charles told me about a recent survey sent out to college students all across the nation. And one of the questions in that survey was, do you think the devil exists? And to my dismay and amazement, 70% filed back and said, no, we don't believe that. Now, can you imagine 70% of the college campus students across this nation believing he doesn't exist? I mean, satanic forces are just going to have a heyday with people like that. I mean, they're not aware of him. They don't believe him. They're skeptical. And then you have the professors and instructors, many of them are just atheistic in their views, evolutionists, and they plug in their ideas and values in their coursework. So what do we have today? Hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of young people who don't believe that Satan exists, and they're going to believe what they're taught on campus in various ways and means. Well, skepticism and deception, that's the way of the devil himself. See? And he hates people to read the Bible. He doesn't want people to know the truth. He's not a being of truth, believe me. And also, there's people to think that Satan the devil is some wild religious imagination. See? People imagined it, and then all of a sudden you come up with this devil. Well, he is around, brethren. We all know that, and we see what he has done. I would never be convinced by anyone, for as long as I have a breath in my body, that the start of World War II by this Adolf Hitler, and of course he had thousands of men under him who went right along with his way of doing things, that he wasn't somehow possessed or somehow directly influenced by satanic powers in Germany. And he convinced the people to go along with him. Now, there's one thing, and I've seen many, I should say, documentaries on World War II. I still see them once in a while on the internet because I had 4 or 5 uncles who were in combat situations over there. And I read about things like the Battle of the Bulge, and I've talked to men who were involved in the war against Japan. And it's occurred to me that satanic influences were directly or indirectly involved in all of those things. Convinced men to start something, start a war, and destroy people. Anyway, to make a long story short on that side, warfare is one of the adversary's ways of getting to people and to destroy humanity. That's the whole idea behind Satan, the devil, and his followers. He wants to do away with human beings on this earth. That's his goal, to do it. But our Father in heaven is not going to allow it. Now, I want to read to you what Paul the Apostle says about this, about being aware of deception, what's going on in this world. Let's look at 2 Corinthians 4. If you'll turn there, 2 Corinthians 4. And believe me, Paul the Apostle was painfully aware of his presence and existence around this earth. And here's what he says. 2 Corinthians 4:4. The God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel of the glory of Yeshua the Messiah, who is the image of God. Blinded, brethren. I mean, you talk to just people in general, it seems like they're blinded or not aware of certain things going on this earth, and why it's so important to read the scriptures and stick by the truth. So then, who is this arch deceiver, Satan? As we all know, he was a spirit being who was in the presence of our Creator, as I said earlier. But he rebelled against our Father in heaven, and he was thrown out of the heavenly realms. Now, here's an interesting question. When Yahshua was on this earth during his ministry, did he understand who this being was, this satanic being who was once called his name was Lucifer, now is called Satan? Well, Joshua did fully understand him. And here's what he said in Matthew 4. Let's go over to Matthew chapter 4. Okay, I'm going to read to you verse 1 to 11. What this involves is the temptation of our Messiah. And this is going to give you an insight as to the deceptive power that this satanic being has on whole kingdoms and communities. Now, it says here, and starting in verse 1, chapter 4, okay. Then Joshua was led by the Spirit into the desert to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, "If you are the Son of Yahweh, tell these stones to become bread." So Joshua answered him and said, "It is written that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the eternal God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point in the temple. "If you are the Son of God," he said, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will command His angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against the stone." So Joshua answered again, "It is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." And again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. "Now to this I will give you," he said, "if you will bow down and worship me." Joshua said to him, "Away with me, Satan, for it is written, worship the eternal God, your Elohim, and serve him only." So then at that point the devil left him, and angels came, brethren, and attended to him. Keep in mind, he was 40 days and 40 nights out in the desert without food. I talked to my dad years ago about that, and I says, how can any person go 40 days and 40 nights without food and water? My dad said, well, he was superhuman, believe me, to do something like that. He was the Word made flesh. He was the architect of the human body, the designer. Well, brethren, with that, let's go over to John, to the book of John, chapter 8. If you'll turn there for me, John chapter 8. I'm going to read to you verses 42 to 44. Okay. This concerned the children of the devil. Joshua said to them, in response to the Pharisees and Sadducees and the religious leaders, because they were really trying to come down on him and accuse him. And Joshua said to them, "If God were your father, you would love me, for I came from him. And now I am here. I have not come on my own, but he sent me. Why is my language not clear to you? Because you are unable to hear what I say. You belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desire. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. Yet because I tell you the truth, you do not believe me." Think about that, brethren. Think about that statement. He was a murderer from the beginning. He influences people to commit murder, brethren. And I'm convinced, start of World War II, he was right there and moved amongst the leaders of Germany, which caused their ultimate destruction. And I will never, ever believe that he wasn't involved in it, because he had to be. So, with that said, brethren, let's go over to another verse here. 1 Peter 5, verse 8. We have to keep in mind that this adversary still stalks the earth. He's still around. And believe me, he's going to be around for some time to come. before he's put down. Let's go to 1 Peter 5. Let's take a look at that. 1 Peter 5. And I will read this to you, verse 8. Be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that your brothers throughout the world are undergoing the same kind of sufferings. Be self-controlled and alert. That's one of the key items, brethren, to be aware that he exists, that he's around, and that he's looking for people to destroy, to influence them in evil ways, and to bring your own destruction. Constant. It's almost a constant thing. Let's go over to the book of John again. Let's go back to the book of John. I want to look at chapter 14, book of John. I'm going to read to you verse 29 and 30. I have told you now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you will believe. I will not speak with you much longer, for the prince of this world is coming. He has no hold on me, but the world must learn that I love the Father and that I do exactly what my Father has commanded me to do. Come now, let us leave. Yep, the prince of this world, there it is again, brethren. Our Messiah was very much aware of his presence around and what was going on. Let's look at Luke 21. Go over to Luke 21. I'm going to read to you verse 8. Well, first of all, it's a sign of the end of the age. In verse 7, one of the apostles says, Teacher, when will these things happen? And what will be the sign that they are about to take place? So in verse 8, he replies, Watch out that you are not deceived, for many will come in my name, claiming, I am he, and the time is near. Do not allow them, do not follow them. When you hear the wars and the rumors of wars, do not be frightened. These things must happen first, but the end will not come right away. There's a warning right there. Not to be deceived, not to allow a person or groups of people to deceive you. Okay, let's go to John in 16. Here's another verse. John chapter 16, I'm going to read you verse 10 and 11. He was talking about the work of the Holy Spirit. And in verse 10 he says, In regard to righteousness, because I am going to the Father, where you can see me no longer. And in regard to judgment, because the prince of this world now stands condemned. He stands condemned. He knows his time is near, brethren, of being destroyed, being put under. Now, the question comes up from time to time, this arch deceiver, this satanic spirit that's roaming this earth, brethren, will he ever be stopped? Is there going to become a time when he's going to be put down and stopped? Yes, there is, and it's in Revelation 20. You'll turn over to there. Revelation chapter 20. I'm going to read to you verses 1 to 3. And I saw an angel coming down out of heaven, having the key to the abyss, and holding in his hand a great chain. He seized the dragon, that ancient serpent, who is the devil, or Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. He threw him into the abyss and locked and sealed it over him to keep him from deceiving the nations anymore until the 1,000 years were ended. And then after that, he must be set free for a short time. So there you have it, brethren. During the millennium, there's not going to be any such thing as deception and doubts and fears. That's all going to be gone, because men in their hearts are going to understand our Creator in heaven and what He wants, and they're going to live by it, because that deception is going to be gone. That influence will not be there, and that'll be a wonderful time for 1,000 years, which is something that I look forward to, and I'm sure all of you do too. 1,000 years of peace on this earth, the way it should be, the way it's supposed to be, and it is coming. There'll be no more deception to mankind. Humankind, brethren, are finally going to know how to live rightly. They're going to live by the truth, and they're going to have prosperity and good health and a long life on this earth.